Well, Colts Nation, we have finally made it. What is going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of Sleeper Colts. Training camp is officially here, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. We are finally here, which is crazy. I can't believe that we are recording this. This episode is dropping on the first day of training camp for the Colts. First practice today for the Colts in the morning, and we are officially underway, ladies and gentlemen, which is so exciting. And we're really pumped for this season and what it's going to look like. And we finally start to get some answers to a lot of the questions we've had. And thank goodness, because this offseason was a long one, ready for some answers, ready for the season to get fully in swing here. And this is a great first step in that way. So we're so excited, guys. And obviously, as always, shout out to Sleeper. They've got you covered, guys, for all your needs for the 2026 Colts season. And if you just have football season in general, they've got you covered. So really pumped that we are finally making our way. It's been a slow crawl for a while, but we are finally here at camp for the first time. So with all that being said, guys, there's a lot of good nuggets that we heard from GM Chris Ballard yesterday, a couple players yesterday. There's a lot of good stuff in there that I wanted to kind of talk about today. And obviously, this episode's coming out as that first practice is coming out. So some of this news hopefully isn't outdated by that time, but it's hard enough to find a time to get this out. So we're going to roll with it. And sorry if there's a few things that maybe are a little bit outdated, but this is as of Tuesday. So with that being said, guys, let's jump right into this. And there's a lot of good information in regards to the injuries, right? Actually, since the last time I recorded, there's been an update on a few injuries. 2 players were placed on the PUP list, that of course being wide receiver Alec Pierce. No surprise there. Pierce coming off that ankle surgery he had in late March. So there was kind of a 4 to 6 month window in terms of his recovery time. So not really shocked at that. Chris Ballard added that they expect Pierce back in about a week or 2, which is certainly encouraging because a lot of us were wondering, is he even going to participate in training camp at all, right? Or is it going to be down to the wire for week 1? Adam Schefter confirmed that the Colts fully expect Alec Pierce to be ready for week 1. So that's definitely good news there. That was kind of the big question mark and the big uncertainty on when exactly Pierce will be back practicing for the Colts. And, right now we're in kind of the beginning stages of that 4 to 6 month recovery timeline. So seems like there's some good news there. The other player that was also placed on the PUP list was linebacker CJ Allen, the Colts' 2nd round pick this year. Suffered a tweak in his calf. That kind of stuff, it happens all the time. Of course, Colts fans, whenever you hear the word calf injury, it's a little bit nerve-wracking because of the whole Andrew Luck situation. But it seems like, and it appears like, from what everybody's saying, it's a minor thing. The Colts are being overly precautious with CJ Allen, and they're going to take their time with him, ease him back into it, and not rush things. So to me personally, I think that's a smart idea. I mean, if there's any time this stuff's going to happen, you'd rather it be at the start of camp as opposed to potentially missing a regular season game or 2. So not ideal, but if it's going to happen, you'd rather it happen early for CJ Allen, and the Colts expect him back sooner rather than later as well. So it does appear that both these injuries, quote unquote injuries, right, aren't super severe, and it probably, most likely, unless of course a setback happens, won't affect their week 1 status at all. And they'll probably both be at camp at some point, which is definitely good news there. So, and also a reminder, with the PUP list in camp, players can be taken off of that at any time, right? It doesn't have to be like, oh, you can't play in any games. Like the Colts could take Alec Pierce or CJ Allen off the PUP list tomorrow. Like easily they could do that. We've seen that all the time. And there's kind of been a variety, right? When players are placed on the PUP list, we've seen players like be activated off of that within a couple days. We've seen them not be activated off of that for a couple months. So it really is kind of a wide range there, kind of a wide net in regards to kind of what the timeline is. But just if you're curious on how that works here for camp and things like that. That's kind of how it looks right now. So either of these players could be activated at any time. We'll just have to see how their, recovery continues to be. So those are a couple of the bigger news items in regards to some of the injuries right now for the Colts. And there were also some positive things that were coming out amongst the injuries. The first one is quarterback Daniel Jones went on the Pat McAfee show earlier this week and said, I am fully good to go. I'm going to be participating in 11 on 11s. I'm going to be doing all the things that I need to do. And obviously he mentioned as well, there's going to be a few things that I just need to, take a little bit easy for a bit. But overall, it seems like Daniel Jones is pretty close to 100%. Now, of course, if I'm the Colts, I'm probably just keeping it as precautionary as I can at this point. There's no reason to potentially risk Daniel Jones re-aggravating anything or whatever. So that's just my personal opinion, but we'll kind of see how the Colts ease Daniel Jones back in. Is he just a full go right away? Or are there a few things they kind of let him not do? I'm very curious from that standpoint, but it appears that Daniel Jones, 7.5 months or so from his torn Achilles, he's ready to roll. So that's certainly good news there. And I think it's good news in the fact that, you're going to have to knock some of the rust off if you're Daniel Jones and you haven't thrown a football in a live, and then again, this is camp, but a live setting since December. So yeah, I think that's just good for him to get as many reps as he possibly can. Of course, don't overdo it if you're the Colts, but find that fine balance of giving Daniel Jones the ability to throw the ball because, again, the Colts don't have Michael Pittman Jr., so there's going to be a couple guys here that are going to need to continue to build chemistry with Jones. Alec Pierce obviously still out, so really the two guys from last year are just Tyler Warren and Josh Downs right now, and then there's, some new guys. You still have Ashton Doolin, obviously. You still have a guy like Anthony Gould, but, you do have a player that you brought in, from free agency in Nick Westbrook-Akine. So he's new. Deion Burks, your 7th round pick this year. I think it's good for Daniel Jones to start building chemistry with some of these new guys and continue to build chemistry with some of the guys that were on the team last year. I mean, this is only their 2nd full year together. So I think that's definitely good. And the Colts obviously just need to be wise about Daniel Jones early on in camp and just, if they need to kind of ramp things up a little bit later in camp, I'm totally okay with that. But we'll kind of see how that continues on. The other player that's definitely a big positive is defensive tackle DeForest Buckner, right? Didn't really participate in the spring a whole lot. The Colts kind of kept it pretty tight to the chest. There wasn't a whole lot of information about Buckner and kind of where he was in terms of his injury. If you remember, Buckner suffered a neck injury late in the season. Actually, kind of suffered it in the middle of the season, came back, and re-aggravated it, had to get surgery on it. And it was to the point at the beginning of the year where Buckner couldn't even really lift like anything. Like he had to be very cautious. And of course, with any injuries, especially neck injuries, those are scary injuries, right? You don't really know how things are going to respond. I mean, we've seen many players who are not the same players because something that happens in that neck area. So, for the Colts, that was kind of a big question mark coming in. Like, what is DeForest Buckner going to look like? When is he going to be fully back? All those questions were kind of coming into camp. And we heard that DeForest Buckner got cleared and he is good to go for camp, which is awesome. The Colts are going to be cautious, just like with Daniel Jones, of course. They're going to ease him back in. I mean, Buck's an 11-year vet. They're going to take their time with him. That's smart. That's wise, in my opinion, especially because you have a player like Colby Wooden who is more than capable of filling those shoes and maybe more of an extended role if you need him to. That's why you brought him in, right? So, yeah, that's certainly great news, though, for Buckner because, like I said, there was a lot of question marks on, like, his future. Like, wow, like, is he even going to be able to play? Because that's a big injury, right? That's something that could be career ending. I mean, seriously, those type of injuries, they're no joke. You don't play around with those things. So certainly encouraging to see DeForest Buckner in good spirits, cleared to practice, seemingly not really any limitations. So some positive news there. And of course, with both these players, you're absolutely going to have to rely upon them. I mean, they're two guys that, if they have good or bad season, it's going to dictate a lot for you, right? And so you need both Buckner and Jones, to be fully healthy and playing at their peak, which we've seen them be able to do and be some of the better players of their positions at their peak. So you absolutely need them to be healthy and stay healthy. So for the Colts, again, I've said it a couple times, but it's just a matter of how do you manage that early into camp. You don't want to overdo it, but also you don't want to limit them if they feel like they're capable of doing it. So finding that balance is certainly going to be something that I think is just critical for the Colts to figure out, how to do that 100%. So yeah, that's kind of the injury front for that, with the Alec Pierce situation, the CJ Allen situation, the Daniel Jones situation, and obviously the DeForest Buckner situation as well. So it seems like from the injury front, if you kind of talk about it as a whole, it's pretty positive at this point. I mean, it doesn't seem like any of these players are on time to miss extended time, which is great. And obviously getting some of those vets back here practicing for day one of camp is massive as well. So yeah, some positive stuff there from the injury side of things for the Colts. Now there's a few other things that I wanted to kind of talk about. Again, GM Chris Ballard talked to the media yesterday, and so he kind of touched on some of these things a little bit more. One other interesting note that Chris Ballard, in his press conference here previewing camp, he was asked the question, and I thought it was a really good question, about his future with the Colts, right? Because if you remember, Chris Ballard is in the final year of his deal right now. The Colts obviously are in win now mode. We saw that with the Sauce Gardner trade last year. So this kind of seems like it's a do or die season in a lot of ways. We've said that before, but with Ballard not really having any certainty beyond 2026, the pressure to win is now, right? And so he was asked about this idea of if he expects a new contract to start before the start of the season. And Ballard had said this. He said, no, and I wouldn't sign it. And he was actually pressed on that. And he had said, I'm in the last year of my deal. We need to win. We need to win. So again, say what you want about Chris Ballard. I know a lot of us have our thoughts on Ballard and his resume. It's not very good at all. Colts haven't won the division. I don't even know. It's been a long time. There's a lot of issues with Chris Ballard, right, from a Colts standpoint and just a winning standpoint as well. But I do appreciate, and again, talk is cheap, but I do appreciate the sentiment that Ballard said there when he said we need to win. I mean, that's what we all want, right? We all want to win. And so I appreciate, at least from that side of things, what Ballard had to say in regards to that. Of course, it kind of leads to the other things. Well, if you truly wanted to win, why didn't you go out and make things happen a little bit more, which is very fair and a very valid criticism. But I did appreciate in that certain instance that Ballard had said that. So that was one of the comments that I thought was interesting there. And obviously, we'll have to see after the season, depending how it goes. If the Colts are a middling team again, they miss the playoffs, we'll have to see what the future does hold there. But what happens if the Colts go on either side of it, right? Like what happens if the Colts bottom out? What happens if the Colts, get to the point where they make the playoffs, even if they make kind of a deep playoff run? Like there are so many scenarios here that I think are not far off. Like I really could see it going anyway with this team, because you have some players that I really feel strongly are some of the better at their position when they're at their peak, but also you have the history. And I think there's a lot of question marks, and we've mentioned it before on the show in regards to the different new positions that you're going to fill and how are those going to go and how are those going to impact you as a football team. So I don't really know what to expect from this team, but it's very interesting to see Ballard making those comments about the fact that he understands, like, this is it. Like, he needs to win now. And so hopefully if he doesn't win now, the Colts and Carly Gordon will make the correct moves. But yeah, just some interesting comments there. Ballard also mentioned as well in regards to some contract extensions, right? Because there's a lot of guys that are coming up. Most notably, Jonathan Taylor, Quentin Nelson are the top two. You got players like Josh Downs still as well. Like Ballard mentioned that, even though his future isn't 100% clear, it's not going to, he's not limited on if he can extend players. So will he do that? That remains to be seen, but it doesn't appear like he's hamstrung based off of his uncertain future on potentially handing out contract extensions. So obviously, if you're the Colts, it would be wise for you to start extending some of these players now, as opposed to waiting down to the wire like you did last year with Alec Pierce. Why not get a deal done now ahead of time and save yourself a lot of grief and allow yourself to focus on external free agents instead of focusing all the time on your own guys? So yeah, we'll have to see on that. But Ballard did mention that, and I thought that was definitely interesting and the fact that he feels like he can still do that. And so we'll see if some extensions do get done here in the coming weeks before the season. But Ballard just had made that comment as well, so I wanted to kind of touch on that as well. Another interesting tidbit that Ballard had said is in regards to quarterback Anthony Richardson. He said the trade request has not been rescinded. Richardson has still had that trade request, but he also said we're not just going to give him away. He said we want to make sure that we're getting value for that, right? He said we need, both sides need to be realistic on what a trade could net. So that was definitely good. I personally, when I look at this, I say, why not keep Anthony Richardson at this point? Because you have injury questions with Daniel Jones. You have a lot of uncertainty at this point. And realistically, what are you going to get for Anthony Richardson at this point? Like, I really don't think there's a whole lot you're going to get. And honestly, you might get more value if you just keep him on the team this year. Just get a compensatory pick next year. I mean, I really think you might get a better value than what you would get trading him at this current moment. And the Colts are kind of at this point, according to Ballard, where they're fully planning on keeping all three quarterbacks on the roster heading into the season, which, like I said, I think is wise and that makes sense, especially given the injury history with Daniel Jones. You need all the quarterback help you can get right now and the depth as well. So I'm okay with that personally. I think that makes some sense there as well. Talking about some other notes that Ballard had as well. He talked about how the Colts are still considering adding a veteran wideout. He said the situation isn't dependent on Alec Pierce's health. So even if Alec Pierce was to, play and come back to practice, it's still an option the Colts are mulling over. And obviously we'll have to see, do any of these receivers stand out to make the Colts feel more comfortable in that? Or do the Colts just have, don't really feel confident in whoever's going to be that third wide receiver on this team? So that kind of remains to be seen, but Ballard did confirm that's still on the table, although he said that's something the Colts are still considering, although right now it's not currently on the table. So again, we'll have to see on that. The final thing I want to touch on today as we wrap up today's show was Ballard kind of gave a little bit of a rundown on some of the position battles that he is watching here heading into camp. He said the depth of the defensive line, the linebacker, the backup center, the safety, the cornerback, and the wide receiver spots 4 to 6. He also mentioned the defensive end position alongside Latu, which in my mind is the biggest position battle that I'm watching going into camp because I really don't know what to expect right now. Ballard did single out one single player, which I thought was interesting, and that is the Indianapolis Colts 6th-round pick this year, Caden Curry out of Ohio State. Again, Curry had 11 sacks last year. He's a homegrown guy. He's lived in Indy pretty much his entire life. He grew up watching the Colts and being a Colts fan, so that would be wonderful if Caden Curry could come in as a rookie and make an impact. So that's really it, though, guys, from some of the comments that were made by GM Chris Ballard ahead of camp. We'll have to see how some of these position battles play out. We'll have to see how some of these contract extensions potentially happen and get dished out in the next couple weeks. And, of course, we'll have to see how really we'll just have to see how camp plays itself out here in regards to the injuries and so many other things. So, yeah, guys, I think that really does it for the recap of report day for the Colts. And as we head into camp, there's going to be a lot more news and a lot more position battle updates and things like that we'll have for next week's episode. But if you haven't already, guys, be sure to do a couple things. Be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on the notification bell as we are just getting in to the 2026 season. You want to be a part of what we're doing over here at Sleeper Colts, so be sure to do that. Other than that, guys, that does it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, have a good one.